Both the Warriors and Fire Emblem series have spanned over 2 decades, but they've never crossed paths until now. While both games are actually kind of similar to each other in that you're a tactician leading an army against another, the actual gameplay of these two series was vastly different. I never really wished that the games would make a hybrid spin-off title before it was announced, but it actually makes perfect sense that these two games come together. While this isn't an official Fire Emblem game, I think it does a really good job of feeling like one, and I've gathered my thoughts and opinions about it here for you. The Fire Emblem art style has sort of evolved with Japanese animation over the years. All of the characters in each release sort of reflect how characters were drawn in that period of time. There are definitely some common themes, but you can really see the difference when you look at someone like Lyn compared to a newer character like Lucina. That being said, Fire Emblem Warriors does a great job of bringing all these characters together and bringing these 2D models to life in 3D. The game uses cel-shaded rendering, which isn't too rare among games with this art style, but if you've seen my videos before, you know that I have zero problems with this. The cel-shaded character models are nothing too revolutionary, but they really do the characters justice. I can't really say as much about the environments though, which was actually one of my main initial concerns. This game was made to be on both 3DS and Switch, which is why I was slightly worried to begin with, and you can tell they took shortcuts on the environment textures for both versions in order to make the 3DS version run smoothly. I can't blame them for doing this, but I really wish they would have just made this a Switch exclusive and tried to make it look 8th generation console quality. I tried not to look away from my character too many times because I didn't want to unimmersify myself by noticing the awful grass or cobblestone textures. The grass texture is literally just a picture of some leaves looped endlessly, and the cobblestone is similar, it's just like a pile of rocks looped endlessly. Like I said, I understand that they had to do this in order to release on the 3DS, but I really wish they would stop making $60 Switch games if they're not going to look 8th generation console quality like they should be. The voice acting here isn't even that bad. Pretty much any time any of the characters talk is voice acted, which is awesome in itself, and while it's not all perfect, I did enjoy most of the conversations. There's actually a DLC pack out already that allows you to turn on the original Japanese voice acting, which I highly recommend if you are used to that. I've always preferred the original Japanese voices in games or TV shows because it usually conveys the originally intended emotions of the script better than the edited and translated version, but that's out there if you like that. Most of the returning characters do retain parts of their personality, and there are some witty exchanges here throughout. The story of the whole game is actually a whole lot better than I thought it would be. The first and the bigger half of the game sort of just gives you very light versions of the stories in Awakening and Fates, which without the fan service probably wouldn't hold up on their own, but towards the end of the game, the original characters actually have some interesting developments. There's even a pretty big twist that I really didn't see coming at first that had me hooked way more than I thought it would be. Overall, I think they managed to make the mashup of characters seem natural and not super forced, which was another big concern of mine. I think it was good to mainly focus on the narratives of the two most recent titles, being Fates and Awakening, just because it made the story feel not so muddled, as well as the fact that those stories are probably the most familiar to people playing this game. Overall, I'd say I was pleasantly surprised by how good this story was. There's 20 different chapters in the story mode, and each of them has a few cutscenes in it, as well as a few different objectives. You could probably finish this thing in like 15 hours though if you really wanted to. Most of the levels are pretty much the same type of thing as the last, capture all of the forts, then defeat a boss character, but there is some nuance to some of them, such as the addition of the dragon veins from Fire Emblem Fates, which will open up new ways for you to travel upon activation. Most of the story mode forces you to play with a fixed cast of characters, but your options do open up as the story progresses, and you can always go replay the missions with any of your unlocked characters. There's even a couple collectibles in most of the levels, such as the Master Seals or Anna's Mementos. Master Seals are used to evolve your characters, and then the Anna's Mementos will actually unlock Anna as a playable character when you unlock all of them, so there's definitely quite a bit of incentive to go back and play these. As you unlock characters in the story mode, you'll also unlock the different history mode maps. These history mode maps are generally random challenges that force you to play in a certain way. Sometimes you'll have to finish an objective in a certain amount of time, or sometimes you'll have to play with a certain cast of characters. These different maps are based around big events in each game's story, such as the battle in which Corrin decides which family he'll side with in the Fate story. Though the maps themselves are based around these stories, the actual challenges are all completely random. The first battle I participated in the Fate story history mode was the Crom battle, which didn't make total sense to me, but altogether, the history mode does provide some interesting twists to the regular hack and slash gameplay. The hack and slash gameplay itself is what you'd expect. You've got 2 standard attacks that can be linked for some minor combos, then 2 boost attacks that can be activated once you defeat enough enemies. Though it is very monotonous, it was more enjoyable than I expected. I'm normally really not a fan of hack and slash games for this reason. The last AAA game I played like this was N3 99 Nights for the Xbox 360, and I played a small amount of Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8, and they're all just super grindy and monotonous. Fire Emblem Warriors, though, is really the pinnacle of what this system should look like. The weapon triangle from the Fire Emblem main series is back, and although it doesn't apply to every character in the game, it definitely adds some nuance to each encounter. Each character has a few skill trees to help make them stronger as well, and I actually really like this system. You gain resources from killing enemies, and each character requires some slightly different resources depending on class. All of the skills that these resources can unlock are roughly the same across all the characters, but what I liked about these trees is that they actually made you feel more powerful. There were no skills that would simply up your damage by 5 or boost your health by 10. It was all stuff like combos, resistance to a certain weapon, or even just gaining a second special power gauge. This definitely helped make the game feel more like an RPG and was also very necessary. There were a couple times where I invested in a character but couldn't use them in a battle, so I'd have to use a similar character that I hadn't invested in, and you can definitely feel the difference between someone you've been working on or not. I think the biggest thing here that makes this title stand out from the other Warriors games, though, is the option to switch between 4 different playable characters. This feature really makes the game feel more tactical. Instead of just running around as a single character who almost always has a semi-linear path, you have to think about the whole cast of characters with different strengths and weaknesses that could change depending on where you send them. Even if we never see a Fire Emblem Warriors 2, I think it would be very wise for every Warriors game going forward to feature this team mechanic, because it really makes a difference in making this game feel more tactical and less monotonous. The last thing I want to touch on here is the Amiibo feature, just because I have a slight bone to pick. You might be surprised to learn that literally every single Amiibo will work with this game. You can use up to 5 random Amiibo to gain 5 random helpful items per day. This is definitely a cool feature, but I was very bummed that there were no exclusive rewards for the Fire Emblem specific Amiibo. This is kind of a dividing topic, but I personally love Amiibo and think that if you spend the money on it, you should be able to unlock some exclusive content that no one else can get. I think Breath of the Wild did this perfectly in that you can use all of the Amiibo, but the Zelda ones would give you something extra special in a chest each day as well. It's not a huge deal, but like I said, I was super bummed when I scanned my Lucina Amiibo for the first time, and all I got was an iron sword. As a Fire Emblem fan, I was super excited for this game, but as someone who had bad experiences with Warriors games before, I was slightly skeptical, but it only took a few missions for me to realize how perfect these two games fit with each other. I can confidently say that this feels like a real Fire Emblem game where you're just controlling the character's every movement instead of the traditional top-down tile system. The addition of the pair-up mechanic, class-based combat, witty storytelling, the 4 playable characters, and really just everything they brought over from the Fire Emblem series also makes this the ultimate Warriors game as well, in my humble opinion at least. The presentation could have been slightly better, but it's definitely the best in a Warriors game by far, and I can't complain too much when they did such a wonderful job with the character models. I definitely don't think I'll be buying the DLC for this, just because none of the new characters are any of my favorites, and I also don't see myself playing this like way into the future, like a game I would normally buy DLC for. I just wouldn't play this game every day, so I don't want to further invest in it, but I definitely appreciate it for the time being. I'd recommend this to any friends who enjoy games with anime, cel-shaded art style, or just any fan of the recent Fire Emblem or Warriors games. Other than that crowd, which I am a part of, I probably wouldn't recommend this for someone just looking for a new game on the Switch. Just go buy Odyssey, you'll probably have a better time with that. Either way, I really enjoyed playing this game, and I also enjoyed talking about it, of course. If you'd like to continue talking about it, make sure to leave a comment down below, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel for the latest content available. This is Max from Max Culture, and thank you so much for watching.